Hello. This video is going to cover supplemental funding opportunities that are available to Phase 2 awardees at the National Science Foundation in the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer programs. First of all, a few general comments on how supplements work at the NSF. So all the supplements I talk about today, except for where I indicate otherwise, will be available as additions to your Phase 2 award. They're only available to folks who have received a Phase 2 from NSF and only during the active conduct of that Phase 2. So they'll be added to your Phase 2 award, meaning that if you get a supplement, then the money that you get will be tacked on to the base Phase 2 award, and unless I mention otherwise, will be available immediately when the supplement is awarded. All of our supplements are requested through Fastlane, but in general, we strongly recommend that you discuss with your program director before submitting a formal request. In some cases, that discussion could be quite brief. In some cases, it may be more drawn out. But in general, your program director is going to sign off on more or less all of these supplements, and so it's great to get their perspective before going too far. All these supplements are available on a rolling basis, meaning that you can apply more or less any time as soon as your Phase 2 award is made. And some of them, the availability will end towards the end of your Phase 2, but in general, for all but the last few months of your Phase 2 award, you can theoretically pursue these supplements and submit a request anytime during that period. What's really important is when your Phase 2 award starts. That's really, in most cases, what determines the window of availability for these supplements. Some of them, as I mentioned, may expire, in some cases up to 6 months prior to the end date of your Phase 2. Some of them may be available right up until the very end of your Phase 2 project. Maybe most importantly, supplements are competitive. We are considering requests for supplemental funding in parallel with other Phase 1 and Phase 2 awards. And so you are competing for a limited amount of funding with other awardees in different stages of the program. And so our budget varies, the number of requests we get varies, and there's no guarantee that you will be getting any particular supplement, even if you have a very strong case, because the funding is limited. In general, the best place to go on the web to get information for how to request supplements and what information is needed is on the resources tab of our website, the for Phase 2 awardees section at our website, seedfund.nsf.gov. You'll see on the left, the lower left side, there's a bar with supplemental funding opportunities, and then below it, a number of different kinds of partnerships that represent the different supplements. This webinar will also be available on that page in case you misplace it. There's lots of other information on exactly how to request supplements. I'm going to very briefly walk through the different kinds of supplements, and then I'll talk in more depth about each of these. So this slide here shows 4 different supplements that are similar in that they all give you additional funding for you to bring in a new participant into your NSF funded project. And each of the supplements has a different kind of participant, but the funding here will be relatively modest, and it will basically be required to be paid as a stipend to the person you're bringing in to work. So to pay for their time to help you work on the project. And the goals for all these supplements is really to help get folks from different groups involved in research and development and entrepreneurship. There's a number of larger supplements that we have, and we'll talk through these. In general, these are all intended to give you more significant additional funding to conduct additional research and development that is going to extend and magnify your existing Phase 2 scope. And so all of them will have a discussion of new research tasks and new technical approach and a new budget that will follow the same rules that you used when applying for your Phase 2. Some of these have very strict prerequisite requirements to apply for, and some of them are a little bit more flexible. There's two other opportunities that are not technically supplements, but we wanted to just mention them because a lot of our portfolio companies can benefit from them. The first one is what we call the IPERF. It's the American Society for Engineering Education, and it is a diversity fellowship to bring on a postdoctoral scholar to your phase 2 project. So this is something NSF funds, but we give the money to ASEE, and they actually run the entire process of selecting and awarding funds for these fellowships. The purpose of this program is for you to get somebody who's got good expertise in the field who can really help you get your phase 2 going and be successful. And specifically to have folks who are postdoctoral scholars who are underrepresented in some way, to get them an experience in what would be called a non-traditional career path as part of a startup, to get them experience for that and expose them to maybe something that they haven't had the chance to be part of. The funding for this ASEE fellowship is essentially all toward the salary and benefits of the postdoctoral scholar. So it's going to be basically free to the company, but there's not going to be additional funding to do other things. So that basically you're going to get this resource who is going to be paid for from the NSF funding to work at your company for a year. Any questions you have about this, I would go to the web link on your screen here, iperf.asee.org, and reach out to them and ask questions. This particular supplement does have time cycles, where sometimes it's a good time to apply and they'll be open to applications, and there's times when their process is closed. And so really recommend, if you're interested in this particular fellowship, that you reach out and understand the timing and the requirements around when you need to be able to go. The other opportunity is another NSF program I would mention called Intern. Intern is not an acronym. It literally is about giving an internship in your startup to a NSF funded graduate student. The reason this is not a specific supplement that you can request is because intern can only be requested by a NSF funded basic researcher. So somebody who's got basic research funding from NSF, which is not you guys. And then the opportunity for you would be that in some cases, the internship that NSF is paying for this graduate student, you could be the host company for that internship. They could come and work with you at your company for up to 6 months. You would get in most cases, a senior graduate student to work on your project. And the graduate student would get a great research experience and a kind of real world work experience for them before they finish their PhD. Now, in this case, you would not be applying for it. You would have to work with a NSF funded researcher, a faculty member in most cases, to offer yourself as a host, and they would request funding through their NSF Basic Research Award for the student to come work with you. And so the funding would not flow to your company at all, but the student would be able to support your phase 2 project if the funding was awarded. Okay, so I mentioned that there are 4 supplements we have that are intended to bring bring participants into your project. These are the Research Experience for Undergraduates, REU, Research Experiences for Teachers, RET, Research Experiences for Veterans, or what we call the VRS, and what we call RAHSS, which is for underrepresented high school students. So if you are interested in bringing any of these 4 kinds of participants into your project, you can ask for funding from NSF to cover their stipend for their time at your company. And the goal here is really for you to get help on your project, but more importantly, to have these folks feel like they are being exposed to something new, and more importantly, that they're being mentored and that they're getting a great work experience and learning about how science and engineering works in the small business setting. So the funding is for the stipend in most cases, although the Research Experience for Teachers can take some of the funding and use it for materials and supplies for the teacher. These are rolling requests, but you should request it so that there's enough time left in your phase 2 project so that the participant can do their work before the close of the project. The amount varies depending on the participant, the type of participant. There is a $8,000 max for undergraduates, a $10,000 max for teachers or veterans, and a $6,000 max for high school students. And you're allowed to request one of each of these type of supplements per year, and you could request up to 2 participants on that one request, up to 2 undergraduates, up to 2 teachers, and so on. So theoretically, you could bring in quite a lot of people into your project, but I would encourage you to try to be a little careful, understanding that, especially if you're a small company, mentoring lots of new people can be very time consuming. And so try to make sure that you don't bite off more than you can chew if you request this types of funding. So I mentioned most of the details about the high school student research assistantship. The only thing I want to point out for this specific type of supplement is that we do ask that this is intended for a high school student from an underrepresented group. And so your application is going to have to explain how the high school student that you're bringing in is kind of part of a group that is not well represented in science and engineering or entrepreneurship. The next supplement is what we call SEGO, which is a nested acronym that stands for SBIR ERC Collaborative Opportunity. And this is basically a supplement intended to incentivize you to work with an NSF-funded engineering research center. Engineering research centers are large multi-million-dollar awards to universities, typically, to create centers of research excellence in various areas. The goal here is, again, to pick an ERC where the capability of that ERC is really important for your particular phase 2 scope. The amount is up to 20% of your base phase 2 award, which for most of you now is $200,000. And it can extend the phase 2 project up to 1 year if everyone agrees. This is something where the money is going to be split. Some of the money will be available to your small business, but some of the money is intended to go to the ERC as a subaward because they are going to be actively working with you as a partner. And this is something where you're only allowed to receive 1 SEGO supplement per phase 2 award. I would encourage you to go onto NSF's website and you can search the different types of engineering research centers if you're interested in understanding what's out there. If you're not sure how to find that, please reach out to your program director and they can guide you. The phase 2A is, again, another supplement up to 20% of your base award. It is intended to incentivize you to work with a minority serving institution. And specifically, the institutions that are eligible for you to work with are HBCU RISE awardees and CREST institutions. And there is again a website where you can search them, but in order to be eligible, the institution you're going to work with has to be actively funded through one of these NSF programs. And these 2 programs are intended to, they support either minority serving institutions or historically Black colleges and universities. Again, you're going to do additional R&D. The goal is to make sure that there's a win-win. Your company gets great capability and effort from the partner, and that the students and faculty as part of the partner institution get experience working in a startup environment. This has a pretty strict budget limit. When you request the phase 2A, you have to request that at least 70% of the entire request goes to the subaward to the CREST or RISE institution. So you could theoretically request up to $60,000 if you're at the $200,000 level, $60,000 for your company, and then $140,000 would go to the subawardee. So phase 2 CC is somewhat similar, but it's intended for you to work with a community college as a subawardee. Again, the goal is to make sure that there's a match in terms of the capabilities of the community college team and to make sure that the students and faculty are going to be enriched by their by working with you. This is a smaller supplement. The maximum is $40,000. And like the phase 2A, there is a maximum amount of money that the company can take for themselves. So at least 75% of the total amount of this request has to go into the subaward to the community college. So I've got two more supplements to talk about. I'm going to talk in a little more detail about these. These are the biggest in terms of dollars and interests, the biggest supplements that we do. The first one is called TSEP, Technology Enhancement for Commercial Partnerships. This is, again, a 20% of your phase 2 award max supplement, and it is intended to add additional R&D scope onto your phase 2. There's no specific requirement in TSEP in terms of who you work with, what types of participants or institutions you work with, but it is very focused on adding R&D scope that is going to get you to a significant commercial win for your company. And the commercial win that you're getting, there's a lot of flexibility in what that is, but this is about you working with a commercial or strategic partner, not directly working with them in the sense that the money that we're providing has to go to them, but that you're deeply engaged with one or more partners that you understand that there's some R&D that they need to push them past some decision point that is going to create a commercial win for your company. So they could be customers who are going to buy something from you. They could be some other channel partner who's going to do something with you if this new R&D is funded and is successful. It's very flexible, but it's really about you showing commercial traction and commercial engagement, where we think a little more research funding is going to get you to the next level of commercial viability. The TSEP typically is a 6-month project, although it can change. This can change, and it can extend your phase 2 award up to 6 months if everybody agrees. And that's actually quite common because it is a significant amount of new R&D. To submit the TSEP, you do need kind of an official letter from your partner, but I would really encourage you, especially for the supplement, to talk to your program director. This is what we call internally reviewed the supplement, meaning your program director will make the final decision without external reviewers, and as with all of these supplements. And so you demonstrating to them strong commercial traction and commercial progress and a really strong potential for a near-term win in the commercial side for your company is the most important thing you can do to be competitive for this. So the phase 2B is the largest supplement we do in terms of amount and in terms of total amount of dollars that we put into a supplement. This is a matching program. It incentivizes you to bring in third-party funding, investment or sales or some other money from a third party or from multiple third parties. And if you bring that in and you meet the requirements, we will match. We will put in $1 of new money for every $2 of qualified third-party money, up to an additional $500,000 to your company. And the phase 2B is, again, something that is rolling, but typically we want you to at the very latest, to have submitted the formal first step, which is what we call the financial package, no later than 60 days before the end of your 2-year project. And the project getting a no-cost extension does not affect your deadline to apply for phase 2B. The only thing that applies that changes your deadline is if you get a TSEP award and if the program director allows an extension. And so in most cases, until you get a TSEP award, there's a hard deadline on phase 2B, which is 22 months after your phase 2 award starts. Again, this is something you can apply for once and receive once. And you can bring together multiple different transactions with the multiple third parties to qualify for the phase 2B. Phase 2B is a little more complicated and detailed, so I want to walk through the process. The important thing, the first important step and the thing that you need to worry about with respect to the deadline is what we call the financial package submission. We encourage you to discuss with your program director early. The financial package is a set of banking and transaction documents that we are going to review to make sure that we believe that they are true validating third-party transactions. And I'll talk a little bit about what that review looks like. If your financial package is deemed eligible at some amount, we are going to move to the next step of the process. If we think that you have demonstrated more than $500,000 of validated eligible transactions, there will be a phase 2B pitch deck that you provide. You'll provide a pitch deck, and in normal cases, we'll also have you actually provide a business pitch to other SBIR program directors. This is something we have not been doing since COVID, but it's definitely still something that could be required in the future. And this pitch is really a kind of like an investment pitch. It's really focused heavily on your business progress and your business strategy and your commercial potential looking forward. Assuming that goes well, you'll be asked to submit a written proposal. The written proposal is submitted in Fastlane as usual and is focused on new R&D objectives and a new work plan and new budget. All the same rules apply to the phase 2B work plan in the budget as applied to your base phase 2 award. So all of this is reviewed internally by one or more SBIR program directors. We get a lot of questions about the phase 2B financial package, and the financial package is really, really critical. That's probably the most important aspect of phase 2B success. So I want to walk through the things we look for in the financial package, and you're welcome to talk to your program director if you have additional questions. So first of all, the financial package has to be transactions where funding is flowing from a true third party to your company. So we're going to actually look at documentation where we can see that somebody who is not otherwise entangled in your company is committing funding that's going into your company's bank account. Third party cannot be founder or owner or other investor, existing investor, cannot be a relative of company personnel or otherwise be somebody who looks like they are already kind of a vested interest, have a strong vested interest in your company. Third party can be either an institution or an individual. We need to look at the transaction type. We only match funding that's going into your company without strings attached. We do not match in-kind funding. We do not match debt, including convertible debt. We do match equity investment, safe notes, revenue from sales or service of the NSF funded product or service, joint development agreements in some cases, licensing fees, and maybe other transactions. And you should definitely talk to your program director if you're looking at some kind of more exotic type of transaction to make sure that they can give you a sense about whether it might be eligible. Finally, we look for that the transaction you're bringing in is really strongly connected to your NSF project. We want to see that the commitment of funds, that whoever made the decision to commit the funds to your company, that what NSF helped you to do was really important to their decision. So if your company is working on multiple different projects, we really need to understand what that investor or customer, what they were thinking about when they committed funding. In most cases, if your company is only working on one thing, then most of the transactions will be considered probably connected to our funding, but it really depends on, where your company is and what you're working on. So this is something I really strongly encourage you to also contact your program director, because they can get some sense of potential concerns on this front early in the process. And finally, as with everything, all the supplements, your program director is going to be the final person signing off. And if they are not convinced that this is a good investment of NSF funding, and if they're not convinced that, the funding you're bringing in is a good thing. Most of the time funding is a good thing, but it's possible that, you could bring to us a transaction that seems to actually put your company in a difficult position. And we're only going to really support phase 2B funding if we feel like the funding you're putting on the table is going to be significantly positive in terms of your company's viability. I talked a little bit about the postdoctoral diversity fellowship, but I have a slide here. So if you want more information about it, it's here. I do really recommend you you contact the ASCE at the website iperf.asce.org, because again, there are funding cycles for this, and there are times of year, when you can apply for it, and there's sometimes when you just might be, your timing just might be bad. One important point on this before I move on is that the postdoc you're bringing in must be US citizens or US permanent residents. That's a legal requirement. Finally, I mentioned intern. I didn't mention this before, but if you're interested in potentially trying to host a graduate student for an internship, I would encourage you to contact our intern guru. That's Dr. Prakash Balan, pbalan@nsf.gov. Prakash is also a former SBIR program director, so I'm sure he'll be more than willing to talk to you. If you have questions, please visit our website to the resources tab and the 4 phase 2 awardees, or contact your program director, or if none of that works, contact our general email address at sbir@nsf.gov. Thank you.